Have you ever felt like no matter how much effort you put in, texting first, planning dates, proving your worth, she still doesn't see you the way you want her to? You chase, you invest, but instead of getting closer, she pulls away. Meanwhile, the guy who barely tries is the one she can't stop thinking about. Why? Because attraction isn't about chasing. It's about presence, confidence, and knowing your worth. The more you chase, the more you lose respect, both hers and your own. It's time to break the cycle. Today, we'll uncover why chasing pushes women away and what to do instead to naturally attract them. Let's dive in. Imagine you've grown tired of expending energy to impress, only to find that the person you're aiming to captivate barely notices your efforts. Perhaps, deep down, you know your own value, but you're stuck in a cycle of flashy gestures, fear of rejection, and an underlying anxiety that if you don't pursue, you won't be good enough. In the next few moments, we'll explore a whole new approach, grounded in the ancient Stoic philosophy, that can free you from the chase and guide you toward a more authentic, more powerful way of presenting yourself and your worth. Instead of chasing, you learn to stand in quiet confidence, letting your genuine character do the talking. This approach resonates deeply with the reality of human psychology, especially in modern life where everything is about loud impressions and instant validation. We'll spend some time weaving in real-world examples and referencing Stoic principles from figures like Marcus Aurelius, who taught us to find strength in self-control, virtue, and perspective. You can integrate all the insights without feeling bogged down by sections or bullet points. The end goal? You'll gain an understanding of how to move away from chasing to a calmer, more honest approach, one that fosters both self-respect and genuine admiration from others, without violating your own dignity. And by the conclusion, you'll have concrete advice and a parting call to action that you can start applying today. Let's begin with a scenario. You're in a social or dating context, and you sense a subtle undertone that you're the one always texting first, always dropping hints, always persuading the other person to spend time. They're kind, maybe, but never quite as invested. Time after time, you push forward, maybe with grand gestures or a barrage of messages, hoping they'll realize, you're so worth it. Yet you finish each encounter drained, with no assurance they even cared as much as you do. If this rings a bell, you've tasted the emptiness that chasing often leaves behind. Deep inside, you suspect there's a better way, maybe one that invites them to come closer because they see your centered strength, not because you jangle every bell to get their attention. This is where a Stoic approach can radically shift your perspective. When we talk about Stoicism, we're referencing a philosophical tradition that prioritizes rational thought, moral virtue, and internal control over external outcomes. Marcus Aurelius, one of its iconic figures, frequently reminded himself, through his meditations, to treat obstacles as internal challenges, not external misfortunes. If we apply that logic to modern relationships, we realize the obstacle is often our own fear, impatience, or desire to prove something we already have, our worth. As we explore, you'll notice how certain Stoic concepts, like focusing on what you can control, letting go of external validation, practicing emotional self-mastery, can directly speak to the chasing dynamic that so many men, and sometimes women, fall into. Contrary to the romantic illusions we see in films, where relentless pursuit is often romanticized, Stoicism suggests there's far more dignity, and ironically, often more allure, in quietly holding your ground and letting the relationship develop on equal terms. That's not to say you don't show interest or warmth, but that you do so from a place of calm respect for both yourself and the other person. But let's not dwell on theory alone. You're here because you want something practical, real, and grounded in human psychology. So we'll highlight a few key experiences you can relate to, along with how a silent or calm but strong approach can weave into them. Picture you're at a gathering. You notice a person you'd like to talk to. Typically, you might hover around them, laugh a bit too eagerly at their jokes, offer to get them drinks, whatever it takes to keep their attention. But the more you push, the less they respond. or they politely chat then slip away. You can guess how it ends. Your self-confidence drops. In contrast, from a Stoic vantage point, you'd approach them with composure, be genuinely curious about who they are, and let your sincerity show. Then if they step away, you let them. You don't panic or chase after them across the room. You trust that if the conversation is worthwhile, they'll circle back, or you'll cross paths again. If not, you remain content, because your sense of identity isn't hinged on winning them over in a single evening. This quiet approach stands out because it's so different from the typical needy or showy posture. The person may think he's interestingly calm and not overselling himself, which, ironically, can spark real curiosity. Let's bring in some Stoic reflection. Epictetus believed that true freedom comes from only investing in what's within our power. Our feelings, decisions, and moral stance are ours to govern. Another's interest or response is not. So we shift from, I must control how they see me, to, I must conduct myself with sincerity and dignity, and let their reaction be what it will. That's an enormous mental shift. It staves off the frantic chase and replaces it with a stable sense of self. Another aspect we can fold in. You might fear that if you don't chase, you'll lose your chance. But ironically, forcing closeness can actually sabotage the bond. Human psychology is wired such that the more someone desperately tries to capture or impress, the more the other person may back away or test them. Meanwhile, Stoic calm allows a sense of he knows his value, so he doesn't feel pressed to force me to see it. That opens space for the other person to approach you out of genuine interest, not because you cornered them with a big romantic display. Now, let's consider emotional mastery. Stoicism teaches us not to stifle feelings, but to process them without letting them drive our behavior recklessly. In chasing, there's often an undercurrent of anxiety, like a fear of, if I don't do X, they won't want me. A calmer approach, recognizing that anxiety, but not letting it boss you around. For instance, if days pass without them texting, you don't scramble to get in their face or send a flurry of messages. You realize 1, you can't make them text sooner. 2, you remain the same person of value whether or not they text quickly. And so you continue living your life, meeting friends, pursuing hobbies, focusing on projects or fitness, rather than ruminating, are they ignoring me? By the time they do message, you can respond from a place of fullness, not desperation. In reality, I can hear someone object, but I have to show interest. Absolutely. But there's a difference between showing interest and forcibly chasing. Stoic-based relationships are built on mutual choice, not on one-sided pursuit. You show your warmth, ask them out for coffee, share a part of your life, but you don't revolve your entire schedule around them in hopes of winning their notice. If they appreciate who you are, they'll meet you halfway. If not, you gracefully move on, trusting that your self-worth doesn't plummet because someone wasn't drawn to you. That's the heart of letting go. You do your honest part, no more, no less. Here's a hypothetical scenario to illustrate. You and a partner have been dating for a few weeks. You notice they're somewhat inconsistent. Sometimes they're super sweet, other times they ghost you for a week. The typical chase approach is to keep texting, keep showering them with invitations, keep asking what's wrong. The Stoic path? You calmly mention that consistency matters to you, and that it's best if you both communicate openly. If they continue to be erratic without reason, you accept that you can't alter their behavior, so you shift your attention to your own tasks. Perhaps they notice your calm distance and realize they're losing someone stable. If they come around, it's a genuine step from them. If not, you've avoided the humiliating chase. That alone is a more self-honoring outcome. One major difference in Stoic relationships is that this approach fosters an environment of respect. When the other person sees you're not a meltdown risk or a doormat to be used, it spurs them to treat you more fairly. Conversely, the chase dynamic can train them to assume he's always going to do everything for me, so I don't need to put in effort. Stoic calm demands reciprocal energy, or the connection fizzles. Over time, the dynamic that emerges is one of balanced give and take. Of course, it's not only about romantic scenarios. This stop chasing mindset can apply to friendships, family ties, or professional circles. Often, we chase acceptance or compliments, not just romantic affection. The Stoic logic is the same. We find worth within, manage emotions carefully, approach others with sincere courtesy, but refrain from begging them to see us. The silent effect is that they sense your unwavering presence, and ironically that draws them closer, or clarifies who was never aligned with you in the first place. A critical piece of Stoic counsel is to align your desires with reality, not illusions. So if you sense you're chasing someone who repeatedly shows disinterest, the Stoic response is to accept that reality and let it go, rather than banging your head against the wall. You redirect your focus to aspects of your life where your influence can produce real outcomes, such as your career, your creative pursuits, your well-being, and building relationships with those who reciprocate. This removes you from the heartbreak loop of chasing someone who isn't truly on your wavelength. Now, let's place ourselves in the shoes of Marcus Aurelius, who wrote diaries to remind himself of ephemeral nature of life and to keep perspective. He might face a fleeting attraction to a certain person in the Roman court. Instead of relentlessly courting them with lavish displays, like a typical emperor might, he'd reflect, is this pursuit within my sphere to control? Does it align with my virtue? Will it disrupt my peace? He'd measure the pursuit carefully. If it compromised his moral stance or dignity, he'd refrain. That's how Stoic kings differ from the usual proud monarchs who chase every whim. Adopting that measure in your daily life, you become more discerning about who you invest in. Instead of letting fleeting impulses run the show, you check your motivations. If you decide to show interest in someone, it's from a calm, well-considered stance. You're not starry-eyed or frantic. You're simply opening a door to see if they, too, will engage in a respectful, mutual way. If they do, fantastic. If they vanish, you remain whole. You might feel a pang of disappointment, but Stoic reflection helps you manage that pang without meltdown or self-doubt. The outcome, you're no longer a chaser, but a person who quietly stands in confidence, letting your presence and virtues draw in those who resonate with your character. This is a psychologically potent stance because we humans are attracted to those who appear internally stable, not those who appear desperate for our nod of approval. In essence, Stoicism teaches you to be your own emotional anchor. You still can love wholeheartedly, but you don't define your identity by whether they respond in the way you hope. So how about a deeper, more pragmatic example? Imagine you meet someone who initially shows mild interest. Typically, the chase reflex might push you to up the intensity. More gifts, more coincidental visits, more praise. Instead, the Stoic approach might be, you show consistent warmth, but you allow space for them to come forward as well. You might invite them to join an activity you genuinely enjoy. Then you calmly see if they accept or decline. If they do come, you focus on having a good time, not on proving anything. And if they keep flaking, you accept it. Maybe a calm farewell. I enjoyed meeting you, but it seems our schedules or interests don't align. Then you shift your energy to other parts of your life. By not chasing, you leave an impression of he's not clingy and he respects both himself and me. Does that mean you never text first or show enthusiasm? Not at all. Stoicism doesn't mean being aloof or standoffish. It only means you text or call from a place of authenticity, not panic. You share something that might interest them, or you genuinely want to say hi. But if they don't reply right away or respond lukewarmly, you don't spin into a meltdown. This signals emotional maturity. Over time, that's precisely what fosters real closeness. Contrary to the chase logic where you might text incessantly for fear of losing them. You might ask, but if I show less interest, might I lose a possible relationship? The Stoic answer is, if you lose them by being your genuine, balanced self, they likely weren't a good match. You don't want a dynamic that depends on your frantic chasing. Real love or respect thrives where each person is free to be themselves without forcibly hooking the other's attention. If they walk away from your calm approach, it's a sign that what they wanted wasn't a stable partner, but maybe an ego boost. Better you find that out sooner. Another question, what if I'm already in a relationship, but since I'm the one always contorting to keep it alive? The Stoic approach is to calmly recalibrate. You'd talk to your partner, telling them how you feel, with composure, not blame, and scale back on your anxious, do-anything gestures. You then observe, do they respect your shift, meeting you halfway, or do they become disgruntled because you're no longer jumping at their every beck and call? The outcome is telling. You might find a more balanced relationship emerges, or you confirm they're not willing to reciprocate. Either scenario, you remain anchored in self-respect. Let's loop in the concept of ephemeral nature. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often that life is fleeting, so it's unwise to waste it in trivial pursuits, like chasing someone who doesn't want you. While that might be harsh, it's also liberating. You realize your time and mental well-being are precious resources, not to be spent hoping for scraps of attention or acceptance from a half-interested partner. So you choose to direct those resources to places and people who offer real synergy. Finally, let's mention the call to action. We've covered how Stoicism reorients you away from chasing. But how do you start applying it? For one, you can create a small daily routine of reflection, a Stoic practice, each morning or evening, taking stock of your emotional impulses. Ask, did I feel compelled to prove myself to anyone today? Did I respect my boundaries? Did I let anxiety push me to overshare or overtext? That mindful approach slowly breaks the chase habit. Then, you try implementing small steps. Waiting a day before responding to a heated message, saying no politely when you sense your schedule or comfort zone is being sacrificed unnecessarily, or quietly working on a personal passion. If you slip up, maybe you do chase in a moment of weakness. Don't shame yourself. A Stoic would accept the slip, glean the lesson, and move forward better equipped. In sum, the entire Stoic approach to not chasing is anchored in a fundamental assertion. You are worthy as you are. You cannot force others to see it, but you can demonstrate it calmly and consistently. You channel your energy into self-development, emotional composure, honest interest in others, and a willingness to let people decide if they value you back. This might lead to fewer short-term hits of excitement, but the relationships that do form tend to be more genuine, more respectful, and ironically more passionate, because they arise from mutual magnetism rather than one-sided chasing. Now that we've journeyed this far, let's wrap up with the parting word of advice and call to action. First, the advice: stop chasing, start standing. Embrace Stoic calm. Direct your energies to personal growth and measured curiosity about others, but let go of the frantic need to secure their attention at all costs. Trust that your silent but steady confidence speaks for itself. You'll discover that those who resonate with you will come willingly, drawn by your composure and your sincerity. And those who don't see it simply aren't aligned with your path, so you can let them go in peace. No regrets, no bitterness. That is real freedom and dignity, the kind that fosters the best connections. If these insights resonate with you, if you're ready to shift from chasing to living your worth, consider doing 3 things. First, like this content so we know it's helping. Second, share it with a friend who might be stuck chasing and burning out, so they too can discover a calmer route. And third, subscribe to the YouTube channel that shared this approach, so you can keep up with more practical applications of Stoic wisdom, like how to handle rejections, emotional triggers, or cultivate deeper self-awareness. Implement these changes in your everyday life and see how your relationships transform. You might be surprised to find that your quiet self-assurance stands out in a world full of restless pursuit. After all, sometimes the most compelling statement is the one spoken softly, anchored in integrity, and unwavering in the face of external outcomes.